Good morning everybody, and thank you very much for attending DIRC, and welcome to all of you for attending the international launch of the International Wheelchair Day, which is of course today, Thursday the 1st of March 2012. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the Ghana people, being the traditional owners here of the Adelaide Plains. And I'd also like to thank the Minister for Disability, Mr. Hunter, for attending, and also the D4D representative, Vincent, for also being in attendance, and also Mr. Steve Wilkinson, who was the instigator of the International Wheelchair Day in the first place a couple of years ago, I believe. Yes, and now has branched out to many areas of the globe, and we're very proud to actually be hosting the international launch here at DIRC. So, but without further ado, I'd like to just hand over to Steve to make the introductions and continue with the speech.
Thank you, Letizia. It's a pleasure to be here in Adelaide to launch the International Wheelchair Day. My name is Steve Wilkinson. I'm also known as WheelchairSteve. It's a nickname I was given by friends many years ago for pretty obvious reasons. So I use that as a brand to go around. And I'm visiting relatives who live in Adelaide. They came over from the UK 5 years ago, and it's great to be here in the city and having a chance to launch this here at Disability Information and Resource Centre. And I'd like to thank Letizia for hosting us, and thank Hunter and Kelly for coming along to give the event some real credibility. I'm going to invite Ian and Kelly to say a few words in the moment, but I thought it would be just a chance to give some background to what the day is all about. And I invented International Wheelchair Day. I just googled it in 2008, so this is actually it's the 5th International Wheelchair Day, and we'll have a 5th anniversary next year, so that maybe is another landmark that hopefully will also launch in Adelaide. It wasn't there, so I thought, well, I'll just create one. So I just googled, I just put a blog out and said today is International Wheelchair Day, and it followed on from there. And you can do that. If anybody wants to put any other sort of day out there, then that's how you do it.
Don't get any ideas.
It's quite strange over the years that nothing significantly has happened. Last year there was one or two things happening, but it just starts to happen and build up, and we'll get to this point here where we're launching the thing totally globally. I chose 1st of March for no other reason than it coincided with the birthday of my mother, Joyce. I was born with a condition called spina bifida in 1953. I know you all think I look a lot younger than that, but and I thought it was a sort of a memory of her and the work she did to help me through my childhood, dealing with the issues that I had as a child with disabilities. So the objectives of International Wheelchair, there's really 3 objectives that I wanted to set about, and it's a day of celebration. Kelly will probably endorse this, that having a wheelchair is a positive thing and helps us get around. And so it's a day of celebration for wheelchair users to see the positive impact a wheelchair has had on their lives. It's a day of celebration to recognise all the people who do great work throughout the world to make the world a better place for people who use wheelchairs. And I'm going to invite in a moment Gail to talk about, who's put a lot of work into helping this event come together, about the project that she's working on. I'm going to talk a little bit later about what I do. And it's a day of thought that I would like everybody who isn't in a wheelchair to think about the fact that there are tens of millions of people in the world who don't have a wheelchair and need one in third world countries. And it's difficult to know exactly how many people use wheelchairs and how many need to, but it's a big number. And I think we need to get people to start to think about, how life's like, and the sort of work that Gail's been doing, and Kelly and myself and many more will all come into that. Just a couple of events that are happening throughout the world, just to give you an idea of how international this is. I think we're just first in Adelaide having this launch event here. In Newcastle upon Tyne, where I'm from, the beauty of starting here is you've got 24 hours to have it, and so in Newcastle upon Tyne, some friends and colleagues are putting together an event at Percy Headley's Foundation Sports Academy, It's happening in the evening over there, so it's quite a long way off. They're going to have a basketball demonstration of people in wheelchairs. They're going to have an art display. We've invited schools to do artworks and design their own wheelchairs. We've got an accessible trail. And a guy called Stephen Miller, who was was born with cerebral palsy, I think like yourself, Kelly, that has been an Olympic athlete and went to Percy Headley School many years ago. And I think he certainly came to Sydney when the Olympic Games were here, and he's hoping to win more gold medals in London later this year. Yesterday I heard that in Kathmandu, Nepal, this is just how interesting the word spreads around, that the Spinal Injuries Rehabilitation Centre there were organising a rally of 80 wheelchair users and other organisations to plead for better access to the streets. So they're starting an event at 8 o'clock in the morning, which I think is about 45 minutes time, so I think on the way the clocks work. So we're just first, unless New Zealand did something or Sydney. So let's hope we're first. And then also in the UK, just to show how it doesn't have to be an event where things, there's a lady called Hannah Insaw, who's a young wheelchair user as well. And last year, Hannah just latched onto the event and actually designed the logo. She just spontaneously designed the logo for last year, and she's designed the logo as you see behind you for this year. And she's actually going on BBC Radio Oxford to be interviewed later in the day to talk about the event there. So things are happening. There may be other things that we don't even know about yet. We'll be Googling tomorrow to see what's going on. I said Gail is going to talk about her project in a moment, and I'm going to talk about the International Wheelchair Club. But I'd just really like to now hand over to Ian initially and Kelly to say a few words about the event. So thank you all very much.
Hello everybody. Can I also acknowledge the Kaurna people, traditional owners of the land we're on today, and we pay our respects to their elders past and present. Also like to say hi Steve. And Kelly, can I acknowledge you? We don't seem to be getting away from each other this week. Parliament's sitting and we bump into each other all over the place. And Letizia, where are you going? There you are. Thanks for having me here today. And Steve, thank you for that kind introduction and for inviting me to attend today's launch of the International Wheelchair Day in Adelaide, the first in the world. Yep. And Nepal to follow very shortly. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm told that this is the first time we've actually celebrated the event outside of the UK. It's another first for Adelaide. It's a great honour for South Australia, therefore, and this event certainly has a potential to increase awareness in the South Australian community, which of course will benefit people who are living with limited mobility. I hope I'm not giving away any secrets, because I think Steve hinted at it broadly, but I've heard there may be some suggestion of making Adelaide a launching pad for a national wheelchair awareness campaign, and I'd like to offer my support for that. And Kelly, perhaps we might work together for International Wheelchair Day next year.
That would make sense.
That would be a fantastic thing to do. So I'm very pleased to be involved, and I offer my full support, Steve, and we might be able to beat you in the UK again next year. International Wheelchair Day is all about celebrating the positive impact wheelchairs have for users, but also to reflect upon the many barriers that still exist for users in our community. Wheelchairs provide independence and mobility to innumerable people around the world. And I was kind of intrigued to find out, one of my younger tech-savvy assistants who did some interwebby googly thing told me that in fact wheelchairs date back a long, long way. And wheelchairs were found on a stone slate apparently from China dating back to the 6th century. We can only imagine, I suppose, how hard it would have been to get around in a wheelchair in those days. And it gives you a bit of perspective because you can appreciate how far we've come as a society in making our communities, if not exactly, I don't think we can claim it's wheelchair friendly yet, but wheelchair friendlier might be the best we can say. But there is a long, long way to get to go. I think we should also note that an event like this and the changes and reforms that come out of events like this aren't led by governments. They're led by people who live with a disability. And I take some vicarious pride in that because I'm a very strong believer in community activism. Before I became part of the government, I have been a community activist most of my life, and I believe in communities standing up for themselves and fighting for their rights. In fact, the biggest reform to happen in the provision of disabilities services in South Australia, arguably, for many years at least, is born out of our listening to people who have a disability and listening to what they tell us about what they want for their lives. You all know about strong voices. I've been banging on about it for a long time now. Kelly and I on the radio talking about it. Indeed. Kelly and I on the radio this morning talking But the report was released in October of last year. Over 2,000 South Australians and organisations were part of that process. The report found that people with disabilities and their carers are regularly frustrated by a lack of flexibility in our current system. They want more choice, they want more freedom and more control over their lives, and of course, why wouldn't they? That's what I would want too. In December, in response to the strong voices, the Premier and I announced a series of major reforms for the disability support sector. The most significant of these is the introduction of self-managed funding. Steve knows all about this, we were talking about it a little bit earlier. It's been in place in the UK for over 15 years, and he can probably offer us some helpful hints and insights into that process too. But in short, self-managed funding will mean people living with a disability who currently receive more than 6 hours of funded support a week will now be able to use that funding to purchase services that suit their needs. They will no longer have a service imposed on them by government or an NGO that suits the NGO or government. As a government, we know that this reform is long overdue. Individuals who access individualised funding are able to personalise their support structure to best meet their aspirations, and certainly I'm told in the UK that system has encouraged greater community participation for everybody involved. The model of funding will open up new opportunities, freedom and more control for many South Australians living with a disability, in a similar way that the wheelchair has provided people with increased opportunities, freedom and flexibilities. So once again, thank you very much, Steve, for inviting me here today to be part of your celebration, and I wish you all the best for the remainder of International Wheelchair Day. We might be able to stretch it out to International Wheelchair Week. Maybe. So thank you very much.
Good morning, my name is Vincent, and the idea of speaking without a microphone utterly terrifies me because I have one of the most pathetic voices you will ever hear, or not hear, as the case may be. But I represent the Dignity for Disability Party in South Australian Parliament, as has already been touched on. And so obviously people in wheelchairs form a large part of my constituency, particularly as I am in a wheelchair myself. And I would like to congratulate Steve on his initiative in establishing this day. I'm very pleased to know that you can just go ahead and declare this needs to exist. I'd also like to acknowledge Rick Neagle, Dignity for Disability Party President, who's able to join us this morning. I'd also once again acknowledge that we do meet on the lands of the kind of people. I think it's an important point to make that International Wheelchair Day is not just about wheelchairs, but about wheelchair users, and about the difference that an appropriate wheelchair makes to their lives. And I say appropriate wheelchair because, as we all know, we've got a long way to go before every South Australian, and indeed every Australian who requires a wheelchair has access to not just a wheelchair, but one that is actually suitable to their health and their needs. I think this is particularly evident in the Aboriginal lands, where not only is there a much higher prevalence of physical and other disabilities than there is in the general population, but there's also a much lesser meeting of those needs. In fact, I'm told that up in most APY lands, basically what happens in terms of wheelchair provision is that a van will come down from Adelaide, or up, I'm sorry, my geography is shockingly bad, to fit people out for wheelchairs and provide that equipment. But basically, if you're not there on the day that that van arrives, you'll have to wait a few more months before it comes around again. And I think that particularly since these people are the traditional owners of this land, as we've said, it's particularly appalling that their needs are being addressed in such a way that is not only not on par with our needs, but so far below it. I would also like to acknowledge the importance of this being an international event, because similar to the traditional owners of this land, there are many other countries that are doing far worse off than we are here in Australia. I presume particularly in somewhere like Nepal. I haven't been to Nepal, it's hard to tell, but I would presume that they've got a long way to go, so it's very heartening to hear that they'll have their march happening. I think we've also got a long way to go in acknowledging that it's not only about providing access to society and buildings and so on for people in wheelchairs, it's also about elderly people on GoFers or walking frames, it's about parents with prams, it's about people with temporary disabilities such as crutches. So while the wheelchair is a great symbol for these needs being met, it's important to remember that this is not the only sector that does require these supports. So with those few brief words, I'm very pleased to be here. I look forward to working with Ian and with Steve to improve the situation for people using wheelchairs and all kinds of mobility aids, both in Australia and nationally, as is in sync with this event. And very pleased to announce International Wheelchair officially launched. Yes.